Kesh is the top business executive at Google. Before we jump into that, I want to ask you one of these important questions. You're a big cricket fan.
Yes.
Which do you love more, cricket or Google, and why?
Ooh. This is like saying, do you love your wife more or your child more?
Really?
Don't you think so?
I don't know, because I don't have an appreciation for cricket. I do have an appreciation for Google.
You have an appreciation for your wife and your child?
Yes.
Which one do you love more? If you answer that, I'll answer the question.
No, I won't answer that question. My wife is here, so.
I love my cricket and I love Google. I love what I do.
Okay. Would you take a moment and explain what exactly you manage at Google, what your purview is?
Oh, that's not very interesting. It's just all the revenue that comes into Google.
That's kind of interesting. How much revenue is that?
Over $20 billion.
20 billion, okay.
Over $20 billion, yeah.
No, but I am interested because the management of Google is kind of a mysterious thing to the outside world. You've got the founders whose precise roles are not well understood. You've got this engineering core that you don't manage, if I understand correctly. And then you've got this giant business machine. So you say you manage the revenue, but what does that mean? What does it mean as compared with other functions of the company? You manage YouTube, for example.
So all the people who bring in revenue, whether it's salespeople, marketing people, customer service people, biz dev people, they're all part of the business team across Google. Over 50 countries, over $20 billion.
And how many people about is that?
Somewhere over 8,000.
8,000, okay. So let's talk about where Google is today and where you see it going. Tremendous success in search advertising, to say the very least, but you want to talk about something other than search, right?
Well, search is still in its infancy, don't you think? People are still, every day there are countries that come online, every day there are people that come online, every day people search more. What did I read the other day? Until 2005, 5 exabytes of information was created. An exabyte is about 40,000 hours of TV. I think this year alone, 280 exabytes of information will be created. So we're going to create like 50 times more information this year than was created in history until 2005. So I think we're going to have a problem. We're going to have to figure out how to find information in this huge, massive information. So I think search is still in its infancy.
But search revenue, though, for Google search revenue growth is slowing. Are you suggesting that given this explosion of information that there's going to be a way to re-accelerate search growth?
I think the way to think about revenue in the context of the online world is to think about revenue in the world of advertising, right? If you think about the world of advertising, I overheard some people yesterday talking about it being about a $500 to $700 billion market, roughly, the whole world of advertising. If you look at what consumers are doing, right, people are spending more and more time in an IP-connected way. And you've heard all of yesterday, all of today, everybody's spending time using some form of IP mechanism to consume content, whether it's news, whether it's video, whether it's listening to audio. So people in this room who are getting bored are still using IP to look at their computers. So we are consuming content with IP. And if you believe that, traditionally marketeers have chosen to go after that audience, that consumer. So I believe 50% of the content is going to be consumed over IP in the next 5 to 8 years. If you believe that $500 to $700 billion has to shift from traditional means to IP-delivered means. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's all going to end up on the internet, but your revenue is going to come from an IP-delivered format. We talked about Fortune.com earlier and the fact that you're not being aggressive about streaming your videos from this conference. So you are going to start looking at revenue coming from an IP-delivered mechanism. So the bogey is $500 to $700 billion. Now, to chase that bogey, you have to make sure you understand what technology needs to be deployed in the future to serve advertising. Now, it's no longer one ad in the middle of the Super Bowl. My grandmother, my child, you, me, shouldn't be watching the same ad. At the same time, we can't be watching 50 million different ads. So we're going to find a way that technology allows us to bridge that gap between one ad and 50 million ads. And that's going to be delivered over IP. So we're going to see a big shift in the technology that's deployed to serve advertising. We're going to need lots of advertisers who are going to have to be online. I think there, of all the SMBs, all the businesses out there, a few million advertisers advertise online, but there's lots and lots of other companies out there which haven't come up to that bandwagon. So in that big scheme of things, I think we're still at the infancy of the world of online advertising.
So, but let's be clear about where we stand. The shift thesis has been in place for, let's say, just make up a number, 5 years now. It's been the thesis in the industry. It's been Google's thesis, and it has worked. The shift has happened.
I think we're up to, what, a $50 to $70 billion industry on online advertising.
But for Google's revenues, that shift has been overwhelmingly search advertising, and the growth has been slowing. So the question, the thesis is intact. But the growth thesis on search advertising isn't. So talk about how you get to the next step, which I assume has to include two things, display advertising and mobile search advertising, neither of which is a meaningful figure for Google now compared to search.
Well, we've been we've been successful in search, so we like it, right? So it's a good thing. In terms of display advertising, I think the industry has been a bit stagnant because of the fragmentation in the industry. Like today, if I used to buy advertising when I was in my last job, and you had to use a spreadsheet to buy across various websites. So if I wanted, I could buy Fortune.com, I could buy Tiffany's, I could buy the Financial Times. Today, by applying technology and trying to create things like the ad exchange and trying to find a way that, as an advertiser, I want to buy an audience.
Explain what the ad exchange is you're talking about.
Okay. So as an advertiser, I'm used to buying audiences. I want to buy 18 to 24-year-olds who are tech savvy, who are interested in my product. It's too much of a leap of faith for me to understand how should I buy Fortune.com, should I buy Tiffany, should I buy USA Today, should I buy the Wall Street Journal? It's just complicated because each one of them has their own profile of audiences. So for me, I need a way that I can strip out audiences across multiple publishers. To do that, you need some sense of consistency between publishers and between sites so I can buy audiences. And that's what something like an ad exchange does. An ad exchange is effectively a place where lots of publishers can list and lots of advertisers can buy using a consistent set of rules.
And you're talking about a Google product.
I am talking about a Google product, but there are other ad exchanges in the market. And the ad exchange's purpose is very simple, to create efficiency in the advertising buying process on display and create some degree of consistency, because I, as a consumer, don't want to be hit by the Fortune ad 7 times when I go to 7 different websites in one session. I need some mechanism out there which understands that don't flood me with advertising I'm not interested in.
Okay, so I want to come back to the ad exchange in a moment. And to get there, how much of a concern is it that internet users are doing some of the searching they previously would have done on Google.com on sites like Twitter and Facebook, which have just giant audiences now that didn't exist when Google was ramping up its business?
I think if you think about it, the number of searches in the world continue to grow. I think I read something like 4 billion searches a day. So people are searching more and more. As information content increases, people are searching. People will consume content, whether they'll do it on Facebook, whether they'll do it on Twitter, they'll do it on different places. If you think about 5 to 7 years ago, when you searched, you were happy that you found a result. You'd be happy to click on the second page or the third page of the search. When was the last time anybody clicked on the second page of search or the third page of search? Very rarely. We're used to searching on the first page. We expect the information to be right there. Now when I type a Canon camera, I actually don't want to go to Canon's website. I actually expect the picture of the camera, and I expect to get pricing details and product details. So the complexity of search has increased. The need for instant gratification has increased. If something happens right now, you'd want to go search and find out the earthquake happened, what's the latest on the BP oil spill.
And you would do that where?
You do that in Google today.
But you wouldn't, because Google doesn't have anything yet on the earthquake that happened 1 minute ago, and Twitter might.
Says who? Well, you get a Twitter feed into Google, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Is there an earthquake that happened a minute ago?
Let's not
even go there. Let's not start rumors, right? But I think the important part is there's this big debate about whether people do vertical searches or people do a search in one place and expect to find the information.
I think vertical search a few years ago was kind of a put down, but if vertical search is Twitter and Facebook today, I think they'll take it. It's pretty good. And what I'm getting at is I'm trying to understand if you're artfully making lemonade out of lemons here, and that the question is the fact that these two and others have giant audiences where people are engaging in the kind of activity that they used to exclusively or almost exclusively on Google, is that a threat or is it a concern?
Look, I think it's a good thing that people are going out and searching in multiple different places for information. We have to up our game and continue to provide them that information. I think Marissa was here earlier this morning. She's somewhere outside. That's what she does for a living. She's constantly paranoid about trying to make sure that we're providing a better search experience every morning. And we're constantly we did like real-time search. We did universal health search. So we're constantly improving our ability to provide the information to customers. And people will go to other places, The whole premise of search advertising is come buy traffic and try and create your own brand. That's what happens. So we have to deliver on that promise. And in the meantime, every day, 20% of the search terms that are searched for are different from the previous day. So you can't predict what people are going to search for.
So I'm going to paraphrase and say mild concern, not a threat.
You have to be paranoid, right?
Fair enough. Okay, I want to sort of load up a softball for you to smack away. Android,
yes.
Which is Google's mobile operating system. Jim Lanzone gave you a free plug a few minutes ago.
Yes, he did. I wanted to check how many bars he had on the signal.
Right.
I couldn't.
Tremendous success by a lot of measures, but, and here's the softball, there's no revenue associated with Android. You give away the operating system. Doesn't sound like such a good business to me.
I joined Google 6 years ago, and I came from a traditional business. And when I was there, we used to spend a lot of time worrying about the 4 Ps, price, product, promotion, and placement. When I came to Google, it sort of required me a bit of rewiring my head to understand we only focus on 1 P in the beginning, and that's product. And the view of the founders, and the reason I love being where I am, the view of the founders is once you create a great product for the consumer, you get a lot of people to adopt it, ways of monetizing it will become apparent and obvious. When Google Search was created, there was no way of monetizing it for the first 3 years, but that's not what stopped us from worrying about it. We all work for traditional companies, we all work in different situations, and we get too hung up about pricing, promotion, placement, all those other things, and you take away your focus from product. So our focus on Android has been, let's make sure it becomes the world's best mobile operating system, let's make sure that people want to adopt it, and let's take away the friction that exists between people being able to use it. And it's just, its success is a testament to that philosophy. It is available in 40 plus countries with 40 different operators around the world. And I think it outsold the iPhone in May. I think Mary Meeker said that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'll believe it.
Let's just say that it is true, but obviously the revenue associated with Android-powered devices outselling the iPhone didn't generate nearly the revenue to Google that the iPhone sales did to Apple. That's an understatement. So just, you are the business guy, finish the thought. Where is the revenue? We know it's there, but I want you to tell.
It's very important to understand, as people use Android devices, they end up searching more on Google, they end up using a lot more Google applications, and a lot of those applications are applications where we were able to monetize. I mean, Google search on Android devices is monetizable. The search traffic grew 300% in the last 6 months. That's wonderful. More people.
I'm sorry, say that again. This is mobile searches?
Android searches grew 300% in the last 6 months.
And over what kind of base? What kind of? You're talking about searches, and does it monetize the same exact way as a web search with the same consistency?
It differs depending on which part of the world you're in.
And how much revenue is associated with that?
That's the question I'm not going to answer.
Fair enough.
Good try.
Okay. The product that you talked about, the web search product, had, just let's say one of the most amazing experiences in the history of the technology world. You just killed the competition. They either weren't there, they went away, they were out to lunch, what have you, and here's Google today, $140 billion market cap, something like that?
Something like that.
The competition's watching you now, including a company called Apple, and they're going right up against you on mobile advertising. They do not want you to have, for example, 63% share in the United States of mobile search advertising. Does that make for a different picture going forward for Google?
I don't think so. If I go back to the notion of the bogey being a $500 to $700 billion bogey around the world, I think we're in the early stages. I think we need to be, as Google, we need to be present in as many countries as we can be. We need to understand how to sell advertising in the online world in as many countries as we can be. We need to make sure we have the best technology that allows us to serve this. And you know what? It's perfectly fine if the traffic comes from various players in the industry. Unlikely that we're going to have a lion's share of the $500 to $700 billion bogey. There will be many different players, whether it's a Facebook, an AOL, a Yahoo, a Microsoft, an Apple, or even other players that we don't know of. And that's perfectly fine.
You can't have the kind of share that you've enjoyed in the past to sort of have the same footprint, then there has to be better growth. There has to be tremendous growth to make up for that.
I think that the size of the pie is going to explode in the next 5 years. I think we're underestimating the potential of video advertising shifting to the web. I think the whole conversation you heard earlier this morning, the conversation you heard yesterday, consumers are going through 2 levels of aggregation on video. I have a channel that aggregates content. I have a broadcaster that aggregates channels. On the web, that becomes disaggregated. So people like yourself, you're streaming this conference on your website. In the past, if you wanted to put it on television, you'd have to go syndicate it to some channel, and that channel would then have to be part of some broadcast lineup. Today, you can just do it off your website.
So give us the update on YouTube, the business of YouTube.
YouTube, the business, remember, YouTube's not more than 5 years old. So, part of it is that in the internet era, we are so used to instant successes that we say, oh my God, it was 5 years ago, you should be worth doing billions of dollars of revenue. We're very happy with the trajectory of YouTube. YouTube is now in a place where it acts as premium inventory for us in display. At the same time, it's very interesting how we're seeing the initial successes in our ability to monetize video on YouTube. So we can put ads in the middle of video. Now you have to understand, the advertising industry on video has to stand up on its head in the next 5 years. It's all wrong, right? From a video advertising perspective. Today, if you go watch a clip on your website or ABC or CBS's website, what you see as an ad in front of it is a clip which is being cut off from a TV ad. So I see an 8-second ad where somebody had designed an ad for television and just stick it in front of a clip and force me to watch it for 8 seconds.
It sounds like a creative problem, not a business problem.
It is a big creative problem, but until that creative problem is solved, you have a problem where advertisers won't be willing to move a lot of money to this side.
People expect a lot of YouTube in part because Google paid a lot of money for YouTube when there was no revenue associated with it. Is YouTube making money today?
Another question I'm not going to answer.
It's widely rumored that YouTube is breaking a small profit, small cash flow positive.
I think we said in our earnings call that we're very happy with the trajectory of YouTube, and YouTube is on the brink of imminent profitability.
On the brink of imminent profitability and happy with the trajectory. Okay, we'll take that. Will Google renew its...
Adam told me this is all about him. I've got to find a way that I create news so that he looks good. And he's desperately trying that. I'm trying to avoid...
I appreciate at least you're with the program.
I'm with the program. I get it.
Yeah.
This is a break-even opportunity for me. The best I can do is break even, right?
No, well, anyway, I disagree. But will Google renew the MySpace deal?
I'll let you know if and when we do.
Do you want to renew the MySpace deal?
Look, we want to do every deal that makes sense for us and our partners.
Did the last MySpace deal make sense for you and your partners?
At the point it was done, it did.
Okay, $900 million that you paid to News Corp over a 2.5-year period?
Well, come on. I mean, who could predict the trajectory of MySpace at that point in time?
I don't know. That's your... No, it wasn't your job, to be fair.
No, it wasn't my job.
Okay, very good opportunity to transition. You've had a big management turnover at Google that you're a part of.
Big management turnover. I think we have one of the lowest attrition rates in the industry.
Okay.
Of a company of our size.
Most of the top people on the business side of the operation most of the very most senior people have left. That's why you've been promoted.
So you're suggesting that I'm just like the last man standing type scenario, right? Thanks, Adam. I really like that.
I said nothing of the sort.
That's what you just implied. Every senior guy's gone. You're stuck with a job. Damn. I better brush up my resume.
Talk about
you listen to this, Martha? I saw a headhunter there. There she is, yes.
That's right. Talk about...
You could be more complimentary. Say, because of my capabilities that I got the job, right? Come on, Adam.
You got the job, as I understand it, because you crushed it in Europe. Is that right?
There we go. Something like that.
Keep
going. I'm liking this.
Where various geographies have 90% market share, for example.
Something like that.
Okay, so I wasn't planning on going there yet, but let's go to that. How much of a threat to Google are the various regulatory challenges in places like France, where the government is upset with you, and in places like Connecticut, where the government is upset with you for spying on people and so on?
Let's separate the problem into two specific issues. One is Google's specific issues where we made some mistakes and we publicly apologized for them, like the Wi-Fi data stuff in Connecticut. But I think there's a broader issue, and I think somebody alluded to it earlier in the morning, and Barry talked about it earlier. Let there be no mistake. The internet was an interesting thing on the side for many years. Suddenly it has become mainstream. All of you in the room have something to do with internet businesses, and every regulator and every government has started getting interested in it. Because very simply, when you operate in the digital world, you will leave digital footprints, right? There's no way to stop you from leaving a digital footprint, and every one of your businesses, whichever one it is in this room, any demo we saw, is going to be able to collect those footprints. You are. Whether you're Miso or you're whatever else I saw yesterday, whoever you are, you will collect digital footprints. And somebody somewhere is going to get paranoid about the fact that you have data that they would much rather you didn't have. And how we collectively as an industry deal with that data issue is going to be something that regulators are going to get interested in. Is it more fun regulating a mining company or an internet company? Guess what? I'll tell you, it's more fun hanging out with the internet guys because they're cool, right? So we're all going to have some level of scrutiny that is going to come to us. We're not going to go, regulate McDonald's or a sunglass company. We're going to regulate the internet business. So broadly speaking, regulators are going to get interested in our industry. whatever they decide, whilst they may have Google in the headlights when they decide it, it'll have repercussions for everybody else in the room. So I think it's important that we all understand that collectively. And I can't think of many situations where regulatory intervention has resulted in faster growth of an industry. So we've got to find a way that we balance the needs of regulators in terms of acting responsibility with data as it relates to privacy, as it relates to how products are created. At the same time, we have to make sure we can keep them at bay so that they don't get overly interested in us and it somehow cripples our industry.
And so how can you keep regulators at bay? I mean, they're worse than journalists. When they want to sink their teeth into something, they're going to.
Is that what you're saying? That's kind of a news item in itself.
That the regulators are worse than journalists?
Yeah, something
sure,
like
I'm totally confident.
I'm sure somebody's going to tweet that.
The question is, Microsoft, IBM, AT&T all just went through horrendous periods when the regulators wouldn't leave them alone. And how do you avoid going through a period like that?
I don't know how you avoid it. I think
market power, by the way. I mean, the digital, your discussion about how interesting the digital business is nuanced, but
well,
they care because Google's so successful. Honey attracts flies, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say let's not. The solution to that problem is not that Google becomes less successful. So I'm going to keep that thought. We want to continue to be successful. I think the only way you're going to have to sort of deal with it is to constantly engage with them and make sure they understand what is going on, make sure they understand the consequences of decisions they might want to take. And it is going to be a policy of engagement as opposed to estrangement.
Good. I'm going to try on this management thing in a slightly different tack now that I've had a few minutes to think about it.
All right, okay.
Would you tell us your view of Google's culture? It's an object of fascination, and now Google is much older than it was when it was a young company with an interesting culture. What's your take on the culture of Google?
The culture of Google for me, has been a fascinating journey in the last 6 years, right? I think you have to strike the right balance between innovation and order.
Okay.
If you get too orderly and too regimented and you run the business too efficiently, then you run the risk that you stifle innovation, because then everything has to be defined, everything has to have a business plan, everything has to be done with predefined resources. If you go on the other extreme where you say, let 1,000 flowers bloom, everybody can do whatever they want, you end up in a situation of tremendous chaos and lack of ability to create scale. So we have to constantly strike that balance between taking some great ideas and getting them to scale. For example, Android was a small team, small idea. Now we think it's scaling, right? It's got 160,000 being activated a day. It's over 15 million Android devices out there. It's gone from being a small idea, small team to scale. There are other ideas which haven't scaled as well, or which are still in stages where they're sort of just languishing. So that's okay. So somehow what we try and do is we try and look at interesting things and get people to work on them, get them to develop on them. As we believe something is beginning to get traction, then we bring in the people who can help scale it. And take YouTube, for example, right? Now, YouTube's got a very concentrated effort around it trying to scale it. Android has a concentrated effort around trying to scale it. There are some other ideas where people are still discovering, they're still working on them to see if they hit traction, then we'll bring in the guys who bring the order to chaos. In the meantime, we'll continue to maintain some chaos from an innovative perspective. So it's not always, we don't always get it right.
So how are you doing today? Let's say in 2005, there was too much chaos and the company worked to bring the chaos order balance back to 5 from wherever it was. Where are you today? It would be 5 being perfect equilibrium. Where are you today?
See, the problem is that there is no answer being perfect, right? I don't know if 5 is perfect or not. I don't know if the right answer is 7 or the right answer is 3. So we feel somewhat comfortable that we are putting more wood behind lesser number of arrows. So we are trying to create more scale for some great ideas and big ideas. We are a $20+ billion revenue business with 20,000 plus people. So now scale has a different dimension to it for us than it used to 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we were a $3 to $6 billion revenue business as opposed to 20 billion. So now we have to create bigger businesses. So I think we're constantly evolving and trying to follow that journey to see how we're going to be able to create ideas of scale.
Do engineers still get 20% time at Google?
Yeah. Engineers get 20% time at Google. Some of our salespeople get 20% time at Google.
And do you think it's a good idea?
I think it's a fantastic idea. I think letting people take some time off and think freely and do something which is different off the beaten track keeps them engaged, allows them to follow their passion, and you might end up getting some great ideas and great products out of it.
I think McKinsey consultants and Fortune magazine writers should have 20% time also.
I think there's some management of Fortune hanging around over here. You may want them to.
I'm going to go to questions in just a second, and I'm going to eat into your break time and go over for a few minutes so we can make sure to have lots of good questions. Explain the business opportunity of Google Me, your social media project that's in the works at Google?
It's a very subtle way of asking about the project. What project?
You know what I'm talking about.
I don't think we're ready to talk about it yet. When we will, I'll come back to the next one and tell you about it.
Okay, so
as I told you, first, in any event, any product, any project is about getting users excited about the product. So business opportunity conversations can wait for 12 months.
Okay, so that's interesting. So your attitude as the chief revenue officer of Google with a far higher title than that is this Google Me project that's in the works. How to monetize it just isn't on your list of concerns right now. That is something.
Show me 50 million users, 100 million users. If I get $1 from them, you're beginning to get me interested. But if you're not going to have enough users, what's the point worrying about the revenue opportunity? You end up building systems, sales forces, and all these different things. You try and focus on it, and you distract them from creating a wow consumer product.
Good. Let's go to questions. I think, and just wait for the microphone, and remember to identify yourself. Here comes the microphone, Mark.
Hey, Nikesh, Mark Mahaney at Citi. I just want to ask about display advertising. Externally, it seems like it's hit a bit of a tipping point. It actually seems like it's moving your overall revenue growth. So talk me down. Why wouldn't the Google of search become the Google of display advertising? If you're doing $20 billion a year in search and you're 70% of search revenue worldwide, could you do that in display given what's a highly fragmented market where leaders seem to be falling off and you've acquired through DoubleClick and AdMob two of the best assets out there? Why won't you be the Google of display?
I think it's a very important thing to understand that in the display space, I think every broadcaster, every content channel, every content owner is going to become an owner of a display property, right? So ABC, CBS, Fortune, all of these guys are going to be owners of display properties. We don't own display properties ourselves except for YouTube. In search, we own the property where people search. So you can have a lion's share of the revenue because that's where people come. But the display is going to be more of a network play where there's going to be lots and lots of publishers, and I hope that becomes a $100, $200 billion industry. And our role in that will be to help monetize the network through our advertising teams and to provide technology from AdX perspective, as well as technology for advertisers and publishers on their side. So I think, therefore, it's not going to be the entire display market, but we hope it will be a healthy share of the display market.
There's one over here, I think. Raise your hand. I didn't see where the microphone went. Yep, okay. Please just identify yourself.
My name is Bright Simmons. I'm from Ghana. There's this notion that most of Google's great ideas, and in the same way as most other companies, might actually come from frontier markets, like places like Africa. And, I've looked at one particular area where people are talking about combining algorithms and automation with human cognitive intelligence to improve upon search. And I'm sure you've heard of projects like Question Box and the rest of it. But the point is, I don't think Google is putting enough resources there. And if you look at products like Google Health Tips and others, that seems to combine the developmental needs of these societies, which is what gets people excited in these countries, with the kind of resources that are needed.
Do you agree that Google hasn't put enough resources into places like Africa? Is that?
Yeah, but also towards trying to mine for ideas in these places.
I think that's a fair observation. I think you have to step back for a second, and this is not an excuse. You have to understand, Google is an 11-year-old company. As a student of business, I don't know any other business which has enjoyed such rapid growth over a period of 11 years. There's no company in the history of business which has gone from 0 to 20+ billion in 11 years, and we're expected to behave like an adult wearing a suit, where we're an 11-year-old wearing a suit trying to be like an adult. Right? So it's going to take us some time to understand how we leverage ideas from various markets, bring them back, and scale them. And we're trying. We've put in people in Africa. We have a team. We have a wonderful leader called Joe Machera who runs our African business. 2 years ago, we weren't there. Now we have a team of 20, 30 people that are trying to localize product. The problem we have in some of those markets is we're actually working with the governments and the ISPs to find a way of creating broadband penetration in the market, because we believe the more technology you can deploy, the more innovation you're likely to see from those markets. So it is a play where we think our focus, our support can be in getting more people technologically savvy, getting more technology adopted in the market, and then using that as a springboard for getting more ideas.
Maybe one more question right up here, please. Oh, we'll do two more. Oh, you already have them? Okay, you, and then we'll finish. Go ahead, please.
So my name's Corey Levy. I'm from Houston. My question is, do you get 20% of time off? And if so, what are some of the passions and projects that you work on?
I'm here. This is 20% of my time off.
No, this is work.
I'm in Aspen. I spend some of my time with the YouTube team because I'm very passionate about that. I think that is the next big bastion in terms of the whole idea of getting video online, trying to crack that problem. I spend some of my time playing tennis. I spend some of my time hanging around in different parts of the world, meeting people from my team. I enjoy that. I enjoy traveling to various parts of the world and standing up with the people from Google over there, so that's what I do.
I'm Michael Schneider from Mobile Roadie. I was wondering if you could talk about your very ambitious project to put incredibly high-speed connections in various cities in the U.S. And is that an experiment, or is that something that you might roll out on a grander scale?
You know, the beautiful part of, as Adam said, this is a 20% project for some people. They said they were very passionate. They had some ideas how they want to do it. And I think us seeding that, us trialing that, has created enough interest and motivation for other people who do this for a living to try and accelerate their view on how they can do it. That's pretty good that those people are so well motivated that they want to go and deploy this now around the country. So the fact that we can seed an idea into a market, demonstrate it to people, and have other people take it on eventually meets the objective. Because the objective is to have high-speed connectivity around the US as well as other parts of the world. The objective is not that Google has to do it themselves.
So
it's
before
going to happen.